Kate Falcha. Welcome to Irish Granny Helen. It's time for our Saturday book, and we are on part 3 of The Afterlife Revolution. I had to read it backwards. The Afterlife Revolution by Whitley and Anne Strieber. Whitley Strieber, who wrote Communion and who popularized the interest in the Greys. The first picture of the Greys was the cover of his book Communion. Interesting man. He and his wife had a very intensively spiritual relationship in life. And when she died, they continued to communicate. And that's what this book is about. And I find it really interesting. This is a picture of her. She looks ethereal, I think. Maybe it's my imagination. I don't know. But okay, so last weekend we did parts 1 and 2. So this weekend we will proceed. We are on chapter 8. Let's see if I can find it. I lost my bookmark. Here it is. My fancy bookmark. Okay, chapter 8. A New Vision of Life. Now, once again, I'll just remind everybody that it has been a year since I read this book, and it just was calling to me to cover it. I try to prepare a few books ahead, and I don't necessarily prioritize them in any particular order. They just seem to present themselves. And I've been doing this book Spiritism with Tim and soon Nate, and covering Stoicism and covering a number of different conversations about contact with the spirit world. And lo and behold, like the Gnostic Gospels, that's another one. Lo and behold, this book kind of jumped out at me, and I thought, oh, I forgot about you. So here we go. Chapter 8, A New Vision of Life. So the conclusion that they came to was that living the good life was taking the good and the bad together. A Stoic belief, I will add. You need to embrace the light and learn from the dark. And I think this is a lesson for us today, current events. So he gives an example. He was meditating. They belonged to this group that did a lot of really intensive meditation techniques. I forget the name of it. I hope I wrote it down somewhere in here. They had a lot of interesting metaphysical experiences doing these meditations, as have numerous enlightened people in the past. Who comes to mind? Yogananda. Anyway, he was meditating, and a young woman appeared to him looking really Northern European, had green eyes, and her dress was alive. It was made out of 1,000 scenes, like paintings, but they were like movies. They were living moments. They moved like they were all happening in that moment, and they were scenes from her life. He said she radiated goodness. He felt like he was out of body when he had this experience. His son rushed in the middle of all of this experience and brought him back and said, Dad, there's a silver UFO outside. And the woman was gone, and he was back in his body and back in the present moment. Interesting moment. His wife Anne told him that you were seeing what we can become, our next state of being, if we have a joyous heart and an accepting heart. She said you saw her life journeys in that clothing. She was clothed in the events of her life journeys. Enlightenment, this is what happens when there is nothing left of us but love. It's that knowing. Enlightened people seem normal, and this carries to the next life. And we wouldn't see them as anything different than any other person. They're not special. They've just learned some things. We're all different, but doesn't make you important and special and holy, and that's ego talking. The lesson is to accept and enjoy yourself. That's the key. Not enjoy yourself like bacchanalia, but appreciate what you have. As an elevated species, she said, we'll have new opportunities and responsibilities as we become more enlightened and we become more elevated beyond the human condition. We'll go out into the universe and we be like the ETs for some other species or planet and share what we know. We join a vast communion, a cosmic community, and maybe be shepherds to help others. For example, once while meditating, he saw a guy fishing on a river who saw him and obviously didn't know what to think. So he had actually kind of created an out-of-body experience where his spirit, his soul, was transported, and a guy in body fishing saw him. And Whitley asks himself, well, what did he see? Did he see an orb, or did he see like an apparition? And he said to himself, I wonder if I'll ever meet this guy. Is there a connection? She told him that we will become midwives of other planets. She said there are no aliens and there are no humans. There are only us. They're like us. They're a part of us. We're like them. We're a part of them. That's a lot to digest. Where they're from is irrelevant. It's not about where. They just are here in the experience of being conscious. That's all we need to know. We'll graduate to the next level. We'll become teachers to others eventually. Some people sooner than the rest of us, I guess. When you die, you remember the joy that you had left while you were in your body. And you ask yourself after you die, how did I forget this? Oh my God, I can't believe I forgot this. Your ego disappears. And she says, we live in a huge world that we hide from ourselves. This is all around us. This is not somewhere else. This is around us. We're just not aware. You're still you, but you're also everybody else. Okay, that's where my third eye starts to hurt. I start to get a headache. Your ego dies, but not yourself. You're still you. Your body or your soul, body and soul are not separate. We're going to exist in a continuum of densities, which we shed over time. And I would like to throw in here, just as an aside, I covered the book, The Kybalion, which are the Hermetic principles. And it talks about this a lot. The different levels of consciousness, the different levels of elevated enlightenment. It's really interesting. Just thought I'd put that out there. The less dense that we become, the more holographic we become, as above, so below. And it's like a clear glass through which God can shine. I don't know what that means, but that's what she said. There is a cord, a fundamental binding between the physical and the non-physical. And this is symbolized in the world card, the tarot card. She said there are 4 keys to attaining objective love. I should probably just remind us all that he is in communication with his dead wife, and from an elevated experience of spirit, she's reaching back to help us to learn things. And through him in meditation, she's giving him little tidbits of wisdom. And there are 4 keys to attaining objective love. And she said that those are the 4 beasts of the Sphinx. It's a triad in balance. I'm not entirely sure I understand this, so I'm just going to tell you what it says. Instinct, emotion, and mind together are represented in this concept of the 3 aspects. And objective love is the 4th, the eagle. It seems like that is in the, is it the world card or the Wheel of Fortune card? Those 4 animals, those are what they represent. The balance of instinct, emotion, and mind, with objective love being the 4th, the eagle. And she said that the eagle soars above life, like the dead. And the distance lends objectivity. Bodies are a coating that contains your soul. and that the soul is using a tool, a vehicle. We live in ego. Ego dies with our death, and therefore we fear death because it's hard for us to envision what it would be like without ego. But it's a transition. And he said the Anne that he now communicates with is not the Anne that he knew in life. She holds that personality so that he can recognize her, but that's not her true being. That's just how she was at one moment in incarnation. So he asked her, what makes materialization possible? You know, how come some people can see spirits? And she said, well, you get the energy to organize. The spirit gets the energy to organize itself like matter. It takes concentration and skill. It's a skill that even spirit needs to learn. It takes a lot of energy to slow down the vibration and lower it to the level of the material plane. Ego filters out what it fears, and therefore we don't notice the dead. I thought that was such an interesting concept. If we fear death and we fear the dead, you know, if you're not a Ghostbuster and you are afraid of ghosts, you're less likely to be aware that they're all around us. We're in a soup of spiritual energy. So to deal with ego, she said, we need to strengthen our humility. And I'm here to tell you that my life is a constant lesson in humility. So I'm ahead of the game. And fear of death is from the ego. So that's something we need to work on. A humble person lives in the self that is immortal. Put down the burdens of desire. This is very Eastern. Attachment to the material world, attachment to things, anger, judgment, self-importance. Be your soul, don't be your personality. And then I wrote how. I don't know if the book said how or if I just said how. Let's proceed. Chapter 9, Soul Tools. So Whitley's spiritual practice includes exercises, and I wrote exercises that I won't even go into. Complicated. You can read the book. It's a good book. And it's meditative techniques, and it's really lengthy and complicated. So I'm going to spare you that. He said, ego is mortal. It's a brain function. It's like survival of the physical, right? It identifies with your name, and it's a tool the brain uses to interact with other physical beings. Soul blindness creates a vacuum, and it's filled very quickly by ego. We become obsessed with the survival of the body and have a terror of death. And I talk about that quite a bit when I talk about these philosophies that we've been reading about. The trick, people ask me, are we going to be okay? And I always say, yeah, we're going to be okay because we're not our body. Now, I can say that. I could pay lip service to that. Have I fully processed and digested it? No. That it's because we're a biological entity, and because we're here on this plane, and there are biological imperatives, things we're driven by our biology to want or to do. And the biggest one is survival. What's the good of being alive if you can't keep yourself alive? And we're very much under the sway of that biological imperative to survive. So anything that's a threat to our existence is foremost in our minds. We have this existential dread of dying because it's a biological thing. And that's hard to overcome because, we're in this biological tool. So that's the trick. The trick is to spend enough time and put enough energy into spiritual practices. And there's no right or wrong way. It's whatever resonates for you. But to learn to not depend so heavily on the physical being the be all and end all. That's very hard to do. But it can be done. It can be. So ego fear is just a side effect of mortality. That's what I was, in my very inadequate way, trying to say. Your soul is not afraid of death. Your body is. So we have anesthesia around our souls. We amnesia for who we are, where we come from, why we're here. It's all a big blur. We're distracted by the shiny objects, you know. So how do we change this? And I thought this answer was really interesting. Laughter and joy. Laughter is the key to consciousness. You ascend into laughter. And I will just say this. I may often seem to have kind of a pessimistic, fatalistic view. I will talk about all the terrible things. But I like nothing better than to laugh. And I can feel that elevation in comedy, a good joke, a funny pun. There's nothing better than to spend time with somebody who makes you laugh. My husband makes me laugh. Very quiet person. But when he opens his mouth, oh my God, the things he says. I have brothers who have a wonderful sense of humor. My closest friends are all funny. You know, that I think that would be the distinguishing common thread between them all. We need to seek that out. Find things that make you laugh. If The Simpsons make you laugh, watch The Simpsons. And they do make me laugh. Very clever. Whatever it is that makes you laugh, as long as it's not at the expense of another person, that's kind of the problem. So she said that the Big Bang is really an explosion of happiness. And I thought that was an unusual thing to say. So I decided this was important to read to you. She says, when you ascend into laughter. You can't understand the Big Bang unless you understand it's an explosion of happiness. The instant that consciousness realized that it was alone, it laughed with surprise. That was the beginning of everything. Soul laughter. We talk about explosions of laughter, so that's kind of interesting. Where am I? Oh, okay. Ego is not experience. I don't understand what I wrote. Jesus always used children as an example of love because innocence and objective love are kind of the same thing. They're happiness. And ego does not experience that. You have to set aside ego to really connect with that kind of love. Ego has needs and desires. When you learn to put those aside for the betterment of other people, that would be the goal. Ego has disappointments and failures, and we see ourselves and others and the world through ego. But ego is a key social tool, and social tools keep us alive. Hence the struggle. To begin to let ego go, you have to take yourself less seriously. Ego cannot be objective about itself. And then in the margin, and I did this a year ago, I wrote, Trump and narcissists. Ego cannot be objective about itself. You will notice that the more seriously people take themselves, the more in love they are with themselves, the harder it is for them to laugh at themselves. And they do not like people pointing out their inconsistencies and their flaws and no sense of humor. You might be a narcissist. The happiness is at the core. It's at your soul, and our souls are within us. They're in all beings at all times. And consciousness with your sense of self and a sense of conscious infinity is what your soul is. Out of ego, entering the soul, you see your personality from the outside. God, I bet that's brutal. You see your body as a temporary container, but really you're like a puppet master with this body. Laughter is the first and most creative force. The Holy of Holies is joy. And she said, God laughs and plays. So let me see here. Meister Eckhart is one of the few religious leaders who understood the power of laughter. He said, do you want to know what goes on in the heart of the Trinity? I will tell you. In the heart of the Trinity, the Father laughs and gives birth to the Son. The Son laughs back at the Father and gives birth to the Spirit. The whole Trinity laughs and gives birth to us. But why? What is so funny? And I have a question here that I put in the margin. Oh, this is sad. Because when I did this, Kamala was being talked about. And there was that whole joy thing going on. And I wrote, is this beginning to emerge as reflected in Harris? Joy, look for joy. I think the answer to that would be yes. The Holy of Holies is joy. God laughs and plays. The antidote to authoritarianism and oppression is laughter and joy. The more conscious you become, the more playful you feel. Laughter is creative because it faces contradictions with delight, and it opens the road to new discoveries. And the reality is, psychologically, this is a known factor, that people who have no sense of irony, people who cannot see the joke in a situation, people who are kind of dour and not very funny and don't find things funny, take things too seriously, will tend to be more authoritative. And it's about not sitting comfortably with uncertainty. When you expand your awareness, you're facing new ideas and new realities. And if you're a person who's not comfortable with that, it's a no-go zone, So laughter is creative because it faces contradictions with delight, and it opens the road to new discoveries, and life becomes a place of questions, surprises, and discoveries. But life feels hard and unfair. We divide ourselves into the world and ourselves. We deny our soul access to us. The triumph of ego is the wall between us and the soul. And I wrote, build the wall. It's interesting. There are some funny synchronicities or parallels, ironic, kind of a mirrored reflections in these concepts and what we see playing out in our time. We think of the soul as something separate, but within us, and people have spent centuries trying to locate it in the body, but the soul isn't anywhere. It's everywhere. It's a part of the body, like color is a part of paint. I love that metaphor. Color is a part of paint, but can you separate the paint from the color? I mean, that's a good one. The paint fades and color is really immortal. It's just there. Moving between densities is traversing through vibrations to facilitate the soul evolution. And to do that, you have to love with innocence, find compassion always, and live a humble, simple life. Those are the tools to achieve that place of lack of ego and love, having love. This will give you a pure soul. You will vibrate, and your color will be azure, kind of a blue. It's interesting. That's the vibration of a lack of ego. As with all manifesting energy, the three pillars of the soul are a triad: active, passive, and then a balance of the two: love, humility, compassion. Something about that whole three thing that's really important. Compassion is knowing that all with whom we come into contact with need the most from us, and understanding what we need to give ourselves. Knowing that all with whom we come into contact need the very most of us from giving to them, and understanding what we need to give ourselves. That's compassion also. The word compassion, it's interesting root words. It comes from con and passio in Latin. It means with suffering and or suffering with. And so it's about empathy. It's about feeling what other people feel. You're not just sorry for them. You feel their pain and you want to do something about it to alleviate it. Or you feel their happiness. You can have compassion, sharing that sense of happiness. Jesus told many stories about compassion. Suffer the little children, the story of the Good Samaritan. We won't belabor them. Everybody knows those stories. But he had very stern lessons in humility. Oh, that wasn't Jesus. He is not Jesus. He is Whitley Strieber. He had very stern lessons in humility. For example, he was showing his brother around his cabin and the property, and he was kind of bragging about it and about his material success. And the ET from the cover of Communion popped into his head, and it communicated to him telepathically arrogance, as in what you're doing right now is arrogant. I can do whatever I want with you. And he let his brother then say that he heard his brother say that he saw a UFO fly by at that moment. And his brother said, I don't think that was my imagination. He worried because the lessons they were learning were intense, because they were important, having to do with the health of the soul. And they were intense is why he was worried. You read the book Communion and you realize what went on at his house. It was scary. And he didn't know what was happening. And it was embarrassing to talk about. And people ridiculed him when he did talk about it. People thought he was an absolute raving lunatic with some kind of weird kink on top. And his wife didn't, but other people did. And people still kind of snicker, Whitley Strieber, those are the lessons in humility. He knew to expect hard lessons. And this event with his brother, here's bragging, and he has this impression in his head warning him, hey, too much ego. And he sees a UFO fly by. He knew something heavy was coming down the path for him. The next day, the bank called, and he had sent checks in to the bank. And they said, we got these checks from you, but you don't have a bank account here. And so he had a frantic search with the bank manager to figure out what was going on. They gave him a day's grace, and they found that his account had been misplaced in the bank's emergency files, and it gave him pause. It was like a warning, and he felt like he learned a lesson in humility because he was bragging about how much money he had the day before. So you need humility to see your frailties and the arrogance of others, but still love them. That's very much a challenge. The frailties of others are always so much more difficult than our own. Oh, I didn't mark it. Well, he said you have to have a willingness to put one's own desires and willingness to put one's own desires and needs aside in order to allow oneself to be compassionate toward other people. And that's, really difficult. The willingness to put one's own desires and needs aside to be compassionate towards other people. And the time to learn this lesson is now in the physical. This is the best time to train on a tool in this relative peace and plenty. He wrote this a while ago. This is an opportunity, is what he's saying, this incarnation in this body, difficult as it might be, both to deal and also to separate from the ego and still, function in the world. That's the lesson, but this is a very valuable lesson. And this is the best place to learn it. In the spirit world, they need the equivalent of compassion energy, and that's hard. The soul energy is expressed in colors unique to the individual, and also, universal and immortal. I think this is about auras. And soul, he said, is red, which represents active, green, which is passive, and blue, which is harmony. Oh, that's that triad, right? We are soul blind. We have out of control egos. So why are we here? And what about the soul? Oh, what's the point? I can't read my handwriting. This is terrible. What's the point? Why are we here? What's the point? The physical life, he says, is also a soul tool, a soul altering machine. We're not supposed to fear death. And if you didn't fear death, you wouldn't be hiding in your ego anymore. You could move your attention to your soul and learn to enrich it. So that's the first step, is to figure out your relationship with the concept of dying. Objective love is not sentiment. Objective love is craftsmanship. Okay. He said they had been working with, oh, good, I wrote it down. They had been working with the Gurdjieff Foundation. This is why I couldn't remember it. It's hard even when you're looking at it. Gurdjieff, Gurdjieff Foundation. And they were doing sensing exercises for a very long time. He learned that the visitors could be related to, with a basic grammar, a structure that would cause them to react in predictable ways and let him explore their motives. They speak a different language. Not words, they just have a different way of communicating. They speak in symbols. And he said the example is like owls. They're night predators, so that means something. They represent wisdom, and that means something. And so they will speak to humans with these symbols that they know what it means, and they're hoping that we do too. They offer a potential new relationship between the living and the dead. This is what he believes. They came every evening when he was doing these meditations. He did them for so long and so intensely that they were able to communicate with him when he meditated. They worked with him to go inward, to silence his mind, to rest his ego. In October of 2015, he was shown that Anne needed him to turn his body into an antenna. So her body is dead. Her soul is still around. She's trying to communicate with him, and she was trying to get the message across to him that if you can tune yourself in properly, we can communicate really well. So he went to an event, and he was approached by women who had heard Anne's voice in a woman who had heard Anne's voice in her ear, and Anne saw him while meditating, is what she said, this woman said, and reminded Whitley of what the ET told him when he asked, "Why did you come?" And the answer is, "We saw a glow." So this woman is acting as an intermediary, excuse me, to give him the message that these ETs, whatever they are, we're just using that term because people, kind of understand it. They came to him because he was emanating a glow. He now knew that if you focus on physical sensations, it can amplify this glow. That's what this meditation technique is. It's sensory, and it focuses on expanding your inner energy by connecting through sensory senses. It worked, and that's how he got a consistent connection with Anne. Okay, so chapter 10 is called Know Thyself. And for a couple of nights at 3 o'clock in the morning, he was jolted out of sleep by a shock to his foot. He'd been woken by spirits at 3 a.m. to meditate before. That's, the witching hour, when the veil is thinnest. And it worked because he could hear Anne in his head. So he did it every night himself at 3 o'clock when he didn't wake him. He got himself up. They once woke him at a friend's house at 3 o'clock in the morning with the doorbell, but the house had no doorbell. And it's not unusual for her spirit to wake him at 3 o'clock in the morning by blowing, like blowing on him slightly. In the past, he collected a trove of first-person letters about these kinds of experiences, but he has subsequently donated them to Rice University. I don't know if they're available for the public to read. That would probably be very interesting. First-person narratives, experiences of people who've had these paranormal experiences. He asks this interesting question. Are ETs us in another form? In the way that caterpillars and butterflies are the same thing, and tadpoles and frogs, are ETs us in a different form? He tells of a night in 2017 when friends were at his cabin, and they had a visit. He had a number of them in the living room, but he saw that they were frozen in place, and he saw short, dark blue beings jumping around like acrobats at the same time. Okay. He had a couple staying in his basement, sleeping, and they saw a dead friend who had died in 1983. And this friend seemed like just wandered into the room, even though this person had been dead for years. And this couple woke up and saw their dead friend just standing there. And the friend said to them, "I'm okay," and disappeared. Then there was a couple in his living room at 10 o'clock at night, and they let the dog out. And the wife saw a fireball outside and told everybody, "I just saw an airplane go down." Then his 7-year-old son ran downstairs from the bedroom and said little men just brought, we'll call him Joe, his recently dead brother, to visit the son. So little men appeared to this little boy with his dead brother. And the brother told his little brother, "I'm okay. Don't worry about me. I'm okay." The dead often appear with ETs, especially small, dark blue ones. I didn't know that before I read this book. I think that's very interesting. So he said there must be some link between ETs and the living and the dead. Is this some kind of message they're bringing us? Are they an aspect of ourselves, a mediator between life and death? Anne says they are soul technicians. They've done wrong, and now they're making amends by helping. Close encounters embed experiences in the DNA for future generations. That's a big thought. So if your grandparents saw the UFO, it does something to their DNA. And epigenetics, those are a thing. That's where experience is passed on in the genetic code. So your experience seeing a UFO will become an inherent part of your great-great-great-grandchildren. That's crazy. Future generations will be born with the experiences in them, and they can go farther in contacting the dead. So it's like generational skills are passed on. The dead don't know far into the future. They can't predict. People extrapolate. Psychics extrapolate. That's absolutely true. The messages that I keep getting from everything that I read and kind of understand from a variety of sources is that we're really not meant to know the future. The future is, first of all, undetermined. It depends on the free will choices of everybody. That's mind-boggling. What are the possibilities, right? Mathematically, that's just phenomenal. But the future also depends on, knowing what's going to happen in the future is not only really not possible, but it's counterproductive, because it would be like taking a test with all the answers in front of you. If you know exactly what's going to happen, why bother trying? That's like predetermination, you know. The value of intuition, psychic ability, is being able to tune into the energy and tell people the lesson, maybe the psychological energy, spiritual energy, to read that and say, this is the likely outcome should we make these choices, but this is the lesson being presented to us, and here are the directions, excuse me, hiccups, the directions we can go. And rather than, I'm terrible advertising for a psychic, rather than pay a psychic to tell you what to do in the future, this is what's going to happen, and here, this is what you should do. You go to a psychic to learn about the energy around you, the potential energy of the events that can happen, to help guide you in the right direction. It's a subtle difference, because you do get a lot of information about what's coming up, but you should never, ever, ever determine your choices solely on what some tarot card reader or scryer or seer tells you. And you should never, shoulda, woulda, coulda, I shouldn't be doing this, but you should never hang your hope for the future on what somebody tells you, predicts is going to happen, because we don't know. We should not know. We might intuit. We might be able to extrapolate. We might have a strong sense of the energy of the situation, but we need to figure it out for ourselves too. The insight is valuable, but factual knowledge is detrimental. I don't know if that makes sense. Those are just words coming out of my mouth. I don't even know where they came from. So anyway, the dead don't know into the future. People extrapolate. Psychics extrapolate. They can see the inevitable outcome and read the energy better than some people, but not by all that much more than anyone can do it. It just is, it's like a muscle. In 2016, he was in Malibu meditating, and he felt like an increased vibratory sense, and he saw his wife Anne, and she led him in his meditation to a room with books, and she handed him a book called Life. He saw his mother when she was very young, and when he was very young. He was a difficult baby. She was put in a rest home when he was 6 months old, and he never knew why, but this MRI showed her as having markers in her brain and spine for Battered Child Syndrome. So is this why? Is this why she ended up needing psychological help as an adult after she had a child? Some people would say, well, it dredged up old trauma. It brought back to her the old trauma of her early childhood. Potatoes. He said they had a great relationship as adults. This started him on a journey of truth about himself. He said Anne had always urged this somehow. She had known he needed to do this, that he needed to face the burdens of his soul. So chapter 11, what is the soul? Anne said, the soul is alive. It's light. It's generated by the energy of objective love, and it envelops, including everything. It just envelops all. We can't see it because it's at a higher frequency, but it's here around us. A life outside of time looks like, a life outside of time looks like, remember the girl with the dress and the motion pictures of her life on the dress, with all her lives showing? That's what a life outside of time looks like. On earth, we live the life in the higher world. We wear our lives. Our souls can be detected in orbs. So, you see orbs, there is spirit around. You can see them with strong attention, developed through meditation. When the world was simpler, it was easier to sense souls. We had fewer distractions, no 5G. We would be in a state of transcendent wonder. We were able to achieve those sorts of meditative states because people daydreamed more, the meditative state. But our technological inventions since the 19th century have drawn us further into the material world, and we have forgotten ourselves. The exploration of conscious light in the pyramid text on the walls of the pyramid of Unas in Egypt, this knowledge that's expressed there was in every culture, but it began to fade. Now it's being discovered, and it's central to the near-death experience. I am going to stop here because this is a weird chapter as far as the timing of it goes. So I'm going to stop here. It's a tiny bit shorter than I usually do, but let's call this the end of video number 3. And we'll go on to the next video, number 4, which should actually should finish the book, and it'll be a relatively short video. And maybe I will do some cards behind the paywall to make up for the lost time. We'll see. So thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. And I'll be back. Slán go fóill, slánte.